Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Eyes Out of LA podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Mesa. And on today's episode, I am very honored to have one of my favorite artists and dear friends from Southeast LA, Anais Orozco, on the show. So, for those of you that might be living under a rock and have not come across the beautiful, powerful, and transformative work of Anais, let me just give you a little bit of background about her and her work. Anais Orozco is a self-taught illustrator and artist educator from Southeast LA whose work centers on how culture is created and performed within immigrant and working class communities, with a focus on collective memories and the lived experiences of Southeast LA. Through a community-driven lens, Anais explores the role of subaltern groups in movements for local and global liberation, with a particular attention to youth, students, and indigenous-led struggles, including the fight for a free Palestine. Anais utilizes visual storytelling as a tool for collective empowerment, aiming to highlight the role of artistry and the responsibility of the artist within narratives of liberation. Anais has experience as a former elementary school arts educator and is a community-centered artist who is committed to co-creating transformative spaces of creativity that uplift and prioritize youth safety and livelihood while being responsive, transformative, and responsible.
It's a pleasure. It's a huge honor and it's a huge pleasure to not just be here, but be with an incredible friend, someone who, as a youth, was my mentor, who I would not be the person I am today without Nancy. So thank you, Nancy.
Oh, thank you, Anais. I know, so Anais and I actually met in Southeast LA. We met during the first Trump presidency. At the time, I was working for the California Immigrant Youth Justice Alliance, and we had a youth program, a youth immigrant rights program, and Anais applied. I was part of really the initial cohort of young folks who in Southeast LA were fighting back against Trump and his policies, but also really setting forward a pro-immigrant rights and an immigrant rights tone in the community. And this was the first time Trump was president, right? Yeah. So this is important because we've known each other. That means we've known each other for a while.
two of his presidencies.
Two of his presidencies now, right? And I really feel like I was, meeting you and just seeing your art and what inspires you. I think for me, it was just evident that looking at your art, how has growing up in Southeast LA influenced you as an artist and in your work?
I mean, all my credit goes to my community. All my credit goes to the señoras, the señores who are living their best lives or trying to live their best lives, struggling under immense pressure from economic, social, political injustice, environmental racism, living through food apartheid, living through these very profound and tremendous burdens that come with being working class at the core of it. So my community is predominantly Latino. There are Lebanese folks there as well, folks across Lebanon, folks from Libya, folks even from Palestine who call Southeast LA home. It still is predominantly Latino, and at the heart of it, at the heart of our struggles is the fact that we are largely working class. And this has, growing up working class myself, still being working class, having gone through a myriad experiences in higher education and the higher professional world, and still knowing that what defines me and my artistry and the way I navigate these spaces is because I am poor. And that's the reality of it. And I don't say that in any disparaging way, but it's kind of this thing where we are poor, I am poor, my neighbors are poor, we are working class, we are still here, we're surviving, we're fighting, we're not going anywhere. And it's the role I take on, that responsibility and role as an artist, to document that. Because it needs to be, I don't know, I feel like it's just, the responsibility of any creative anywhere to you know, you have a responsibility to uplift folks like people in my community. Otherwise, who else is going to be in charge of our stories if not us, you know?
Yes, and I feel like one of the elements I love in your art is the storytelling of Southeast LA. Um, I feel like, now people use the word SELA. It's kind of popular, but um, prior to kind of like Southeast LA being quote unquote like SELA, right? There really wasn't a lot of there was artists that were creating. There was artists kind of creating art, kind of imagining either a different or a quote unquote better neighborhood. And I feel like your art always was really good or has been really good, just reflecting what is.
Yes.
Like what you see, right?
Yeah.
Not kind of like a gentrified version of what you want community to be, but really kind of like the real nitty gritty community.
And I think that's like with this thing of, I mean, even I use the acronym SELA. My friends, my family, my community members, it's a very specific demographic that I am, as a young person myself, am a part of, who uses that acronym SELA. But for the majority of people, it's La Ciudad de Huntington Park. It's, streets like La Pacific, La Florence, Bell, Maywood, Cudahy. It's never really been this thing where we had to, I guess, make into one acronym, which I think is just the new way of like saying, CDMX instead of like DF or, Mexico City. Is just unfortunately, these terms do contribute to the gentrification of, and ultimately, I don't know, just like this whitewashing in like a really specific middle class Latino way that unfortunately that has permeated through the community. And it's under this pretense of wanting to establish these resources and these places that we have been denied for our entire lives, right? Like most folks don't know where Southeast LA is, or, our communities. We don't have good grocery stores. We don't have these, I guess, amenities where, if you go to West LA, or if you go, I guess even like, sadly, like post-gentrification Northeast LA that unfortunately now, have come about after gentrification. But I think like the thing that I have to remember as an artist is I can either uplift that in terms of how I imagine Southeast LA from a perspective of someone who is young and ambitious and who wants to, quote unquote, self-gentrify or gentify, which is ultimately just, gentrifying your community, but it's like brown people doing it, which I'm completely, like, no way. Like, there's no amount of, quote unquote, buying back our community. Our communities have been established by immigrants, undocumented folks, people across Latin America, people across, the other side of the world. This is their community. We're living in it. We as young people, we're living in it. So it's like, why would I visually document a world or a community that strips that dignity, that strips that livelihood from my own community? Why would I want to visually imagine these spaces that don't make our grandparents feel included, that don't make the señors at the bus stop feel included, when this is their community? We owe it to them. It's like we owe it to them. Why do we want all these places that come from the imagination of people who have not struggled at their level?
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna visually uplift that. I'm gonna visually uplift what is home and the people who have created home. And the people who have created home are our elders. There are youth who struggle. There are our immigrant neighbors. There are friends who didn't get to go to college, didn't get to go to university. They don't have what salary jobs, like this is not, this is the community of people who struggle. And I mean, it's my job as an artist I gotta visualize that.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like that is why a lot of folks, especially in Southeast LA, love and connect with your work. Because I feel like I know, like in our group text, or or just like on the comments, or anytime you release a new graphic, folks are always like, Noche Divina does it again. It's just kind of, and I feel like, right, because it's coming, like, being in a working class neighborhood when folks are literally every day struggling. Like we said, like, everyone la hace su lucha cada día. Literally, everyone is out there fighting their fight every single day to pay the rent, to, like, make ends meet. I think for folks, when they see your art, right, it's like I know, like, I connect to it because it's like it's real, right? It's like you're like really depicting like the reality that what's happening, and I think, but also really kind of putting a very like colorful and vibrant tone into it, which I think like is also important, right? Like, yes, like there is a lot that needs to improve in our community, but there's also so much beauty within it already, and I feel like that is what I get when I see like your visuals. Like, I just, it's a story, right? It's not just an image for clout, right? It's a story. It's connected to struggle, and I feel like in our current, just currently, like, one, just so much has happened this past year. So much has happened since like the pandemic till now. But like, I think one of the conversations that we always come back to is like, what is the role of artists, right? And what role artists play in movements and movement building. And I feel like, honestly, like, you're an amazing example of like the role artists play, and even in your bio, right? And kind of what you kind of shared with me is like, yes, your work is, it's about being responsive, transformative, and responsible.
Yes.
And I feel like the responsibility part is kind of where a lot of tension has been. There's been a lot of tension, right? In artist communities, or just in generally, what, right, people talk about like the role of art. But yeah. So like for you, like, what, like, in terms of like seeing movements, what made you kind of want to gravitate towards art as a way of engaging? Yeah, like, what made
what a question.
baby Anais Orozco?
Dang, well,
yeah, see, this is what I want to do. I want art.
I mean, literally, as a baby, like, I have memories being like 1-2 years old, and my dad, so he passed that on to me for sure. I have I have the privilege of coming from a very artistic family. My dad is a badass designer. He was the one who would sit me on his lap, and he would sketch with me, he would draw with me, literally as a baby. And I don't know, it just like it was just ingrained from from the time I was born. Like, this is just what you're supposed to do, I think. So I think I forget who it was who had bestowed this very critical piece of knowledge, and this like sense of like really like being in tune with the role of art in struggle. But they said, or I read somewhere, I forgot, but when words and everything else fails, it's visuals that transcend so many cultural barriers, that transcend so many linguistic barriers. And coming from such a vibrant and colorful community as it is, like, with the ways that we struggle again in our community are so immense now, even more so because the state of the world. I think I have carried that piece of knowledge with me, and that it has become another responsibility that I proudly take on, knowing that something that I create visually can be so powerful and so impactful enough that it can be literally read by folks who don't speak English, folks who don't speak Spanish even, which are the two primary languages that I create and that I work in, that my work can be reached across the world. And I don't know, it's just our responsibility, it's our duty. Like, that's when words fail, and they have so often, when everything else in this world fails, like, all you have are visuals, and that's why you have to be super conscious of how signs and symbols, especially in art, carry so much power and meaning. And essentially, our cultures, every single culture that exists in this world, is literally just the organization of power and symbols and visuals. And so it's my job to portray these cultures and to not contribute to them in a way that oversteps or undermine these narratives that are at deep risk of being just completely forgotten and washed away, whether that's in my own community, in my, global communities, in Latino America, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Mexico, in Venezuela, even in Cuba, if it's just our job, like we have to, we just got to represent these things visually in a way that doesn't contribute to narratives that ultimately erase these cultures and these struggles.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I agree that definitely words have failed.
There's only so many things that can be said time and time again. We know we're living in a fascist empire. I see keyword like all like fascist. I see fascism. I see, yes, we all know we can say these things again and again, but I think it's the real labor comes from, how can I be creative with this? How can I visually document this in a way that doesn't give power to words that we all know they exist? We know we can describe these things in words, but how can we amplify the struggle, the cause in a powerful way with more than just words, with visuals that actually can unite cultures for the greater good?
Yes, and I think that's important because here as Andalon, like we know like art and culture are front and center to our political organizing. So that's why behind us you have all these artist collaborations we have with the bandanas that have been seen all over LA and like the US. We have a mobile stage that we've brought twice. So I think
twice that mobile
SELA
stage.
We've had 2 celebrations with the mobile stage. The last one was both have been at Maywood Riverfront Park. And the last one we brought Los Cadetes de Linares with La Corraleros, right? So for us, like to folks who know Andalon, right, it's obvious that we like for us, art and culture are at the center. And I feel like right now we're at a pivotal moment where a lot of folks are asking, right, like how do I engage, right? How do I plug in? Mm-hmm. I think for like us, like this is definitely not our first rodeo, right?
It's only gotten worse. Rodeo has only gotten
like we thought it was bad back then, and things have only definitely worsened. But I think for me, like I just really appreciate like how you really express how artists can be involved within movement building and the important role they play. Because I think on the flip side, right, sometimes we have organizers or folks who are doing the organizing who are not thinking through the visual strategy, mm-hmm. right, or the cultural strategy, or just even the fun strategy, right, like how we're going to keep the energies and the vibes and things alive, right? But these are all elements that are extremely important in building and sustaining of movement, and artists are central to it. And I feel like honestly so lucky because I got to work with you like through when we first met, where you were able to develop a lot of immigrant rights like visuals and messaging for SELA, when back then it was not that popular as it is now. Like fortunately we have a lot more solidarity, mm-hmm. But it was a very conservative place to kind of say some of the things that you were saying and illustrating, but you did it right. And I feel like I've only seen your art get bolder. Like you've been bold.
You gotta not be afraid. You gotta not be afraid. You have to, if you, man, again, like I come back to the things, these people in my life who have told me, these messages that people have bestowed upon me, and this key line, another key line that I carry with me is that my late grandfather, so he was an immigrant, educated man for all the way, he came from Mexico, and he just always believed in the cause, believed in the struggle. He came to Huntington Park, lived his life in Huntington Park, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm in Huntington Park.
Hey, gracias.
But maybe about a couple years before he passed, and this was a man who was very stoic. Like we never had emotional discussions, but we were having breakfast, or we were sharing like a cafecito and pan. Maybe about 2 years before he passed, and he was like, si crees en algo, if you believe in something, hay que luchar por ello. You have to fight for it. And he teared up. And this was a man, again, who was very stoic. Like he was conservative in his morals and his beliefs, but he was also very, very progressive and very, very on the left side of things. And so as soon as he said that, I will never forget the way he said it. And to this day, like every time I make a piece of art, every time someone I'm so just filled with humility and filled with gratitude when someone is like, wow, your art is so transformative, so impactful. It makes me, cry. It makes me feel at home. I think of those words from my grandfather. Like, if you believe in something, you have to fight for it, even if it's hard. Whether, you're getting your praises for it, whether you're getting tremendous backlash from it. And I've gotten so much backlash. Like, even in these good or in these hard and in these tender, soft moments of being an artist, when you believe in something, you have to fight for it. And sometimes the fight is hard. Sometimes it's devastating. Sometimes it's joyful. Sometimes you get to dance to Cadetes de Linares with your friends or with your elders in your community. Sometimes you're getting hate comments in your DM. Sometimes, you're seeing, people on the street wearing shirts with your designs. And in every single one of these moments, you have to remember this is something you are fighting for. And that has grounded me so deeply in my own practice, because now it's like, yes, everything I create has a purpose, has a message, has a meaning. I'm never going to take that for granted. I feel like every artist just needs to remember that.
Yes. And I feel so lucky because in the work that I get to do, right, and kind of the privilege and honor of like carrying a lot of work for England, a lot of the work is in Southeast LA. And we I feel very lucky that one, you're an artist in that community, because the visuals of the Aís out of SELA campaign have been amazing. Right? It's just so amazing when you have a community print, like an artist like you who's just so connected and part, right? You don't see you're not a part, right, from the struggle. You are part of the struggle. And, so I brought, so I actually have this, it's in my altar in my house that I have my little altar. And so I brought it from my altar. This is one of my favorite recent images of yours. And I say I'm so lucky because a lot of my work is in Southeast LA. Spend a lot of time there. I'm going to spend more time there because things are crazy.
No, we need you there.
But this is what I mean, right, of like having a campaign that's connected to art. So I'm going to tell you why I love this piece. So, here we have, an awesome visual that says, "The people of resilience cannot be broken. Aís out of Southeast LA, Aís out of SELA." In the bottom right, it's the cities: Bell, Cudahy, Vernon, Southgate, HP, Linwood, Maywood, and Bell Gardens.
Someone argue that is an incomplete list.
Yes. Oh, this is always a what's it called?
Yeah. SELA infighting.
Yes. There are various camps.
Yeah. How many neighborhoods are there in SELA?
That could be its own episode, which we could do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I feel for me, what I love this image is really like the people of resilience. And I feel like there's been one, right, we're gearing the 1 year of the siege, where like really the siege of LA escalated in terms of the ICE siege in LA. And I feel like there's been so many moments where it's just been hard. It's been hard where it's like so much to process, where like just raids.
It's collective trauma. Yeah. And it's like a trauma that and I have to, like, I'll get to this and I will say, like, it's a trauma that, we're seeing the Israeli occupation forces just wage absolute terror and destruction on the other side of the world. And it is obviously, it's not the same escalation of violence here, but it is absolutely within the same nature. And both of those entities, ICE and the IOF, they're absolutely part of the same machine. And I think when we talk about, we're witnessing this devastation through our phones, and we see how traumatized, how there's just no words to describe what is happening over there. And here it's like you see the commonalities, and it's like you can't help but make those connections between our global communities. And I think that has also been, like, when I make things like this, I have to remember too, I'm not just speaking for SELA. Like, SELA is home, and these are my people, and these are my neighbors, but it's also these sentiments echo in our larger struggles. And this actually, this day was actually, SELA folks would know when the Battle of Bell happened, which was just absolutely, even recalling it now, I get like this feeling in my chest that I'm sure so many of my neighbors do, who witnessed this, who bared witness to what happened in Bell on this day. I believe it was June or July, and this literally happened on a street that I myself, my friends, my loved ones are always walking down, where my community members are at bus stops, where they go to car washes, where they go to Northgate to get their groceries. And you know, community came out, and it was such a powerful show of, you know, like, we're not gonna let this happen here, despite the repercussions. And there were heavy repercussions, and ICE began targeting just individual, like, psychological operations, violent operations against my neighbors, you know, not within my street, but within my greater community. And so when this happened, I was driving by when, you know, we saw all these undercover cars just swarm Jack's Car Wash, which is no longer there, which you have to wonder why, you know? And so I was not in the center of this, but it became part of my lived experiences of how it informed the way I carry myself in this community. And I felt like I had no choice but to visualize this while it had just happened. So this was literally done within like 3 or 5 hours of this happening, because oh my gosh, like, it was so, even recalling it now, it was literally a war zone. Yeah. It was a war zone. Even for people who weren't there, they knew it was a war zone. And that area, if I recall, like, it was empty for weeks after. It was so, coming home from that day, again, I wasn't present, but I was there. I was passing that street when you saw all of these undercover cars, when you saw all of these people, you saw the choppers. It was horrific just to witness even that. And later that night, I was like, I don't know, I guess selfishly, for my own sake, I'm like, if others are struggling with having bared witness to this, and I wasn't, and people who were on the ground, like, oh my God, like, you are saviors in the community. You are preventing people from being abducted, from being tortured, from being, completely just wiped off from this community. And so I don't know, this line, the people of resilience, it just came to me because we are so resilient, Nancy. Yeah. We have lived through it all in our home countries, living in Bell, in Huntington Park, in Maywood, and in every Southeast LA city. We come traumatized from our, not we, because I have the privilege of being born here, but my father, my father's family, they carry their traumas here, and then they continue to be traumatized here. If that is not the definition of resilience, and I'm very careful to not romanticize that, because that is the last thing that I'm going to do as an artist, is to romanticize and to glorify these horrific struggles and this nature of resilience. But if we are not anything, we are resilient. And it is so painful to have to say those words, but if we are not anything, we are resilient. We are resilient coming from our homelands. We are resilient living here, struggling through different diseases that we have to endure because of environmental racism. We have to struggle through poverty, through insecurity, through local city council corruption. If we are not anything, we are resilient. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but if we are a very resilient people. We are a very resilient people.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you shared that, because that's also the phrase that stuck with me, like, the people of resilience. I remember when I saw the visual, like, I mean, I always cry by your arm. I'm a Taurus, I'm emotional, but I also cried because, so for folks that are not familiar, so this kind of image really marks, like, the 1 year anniversary almost of when really the heightened terror that we've seen in our community through ICE violence. But ICE agents, these kidnappers were at Jack's car wash, and of course we know they're untrained and just ruthless. They were kind of exiting, got in a car accident along the way. And then because, of the accident happened, like they were stalled there, community found out, so here you see right in front of like Mainline Skate Shop, which was up the street. So that is where like the ICE agents were stalled, and literally everyone and their mamas and their tias and their tios came out.
They swarmed. And they were like, you are not taking my neighbors today. You are not taking my neighbors any day. And I don't know if I'm just mixing, if all, the wires in my head are crossed, but literally later that day, there was almost like a celebration, right? I believe.
Yes, at night.
Everyone, you saw Mexican flags, you saw flags of Central America, you saw the Lebanese flag, because Bell is home to a beautiful community of folks from Lebanon. I believe majority from the south of Lebanon. Again, another community heavily targeted by the IOF, and so all of our struggles, we came together knowing all our struggles are the same, and it was this not beautiful, but it was just this very impactful display of like, we drove y'all out of here, and guess what? And and if it happens again, it's gonna happen again. And community came out with their flags, to just really solidify this, like, we are resilient. We are here. Like, you're not going to take our neighbors in front of the North Gate when they're trying to get groceries, or when they're, driving their kids to soccer practice or whatever it may be, like, we're not going anywhere.
And you're not going to break us. Because I feel like that day, so why people call it the Battle of Bell was because it's when the community of Bell fought back on its own, right? Not like with any nonprofits or any
no city council.
This was like very, here at Enderlawn, one of our political theories is that somos más, right? That there are more of us than there are of the pundits, of the haters, of the cops, right? Of ICE agents. And I feel like for me that day was an example of like a visual representation of somos más.
It's
the community
true.
Outnumbered the ICE agents. They were stalled for like hours, and even when they left, the community let their feelings known. And like Anais mentioned, right, and it didn't stop there. Just and again, all of this we're seeing through our phones in real life on everywhere, like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok.
On our Citizen app, there were so many just young, like, middle schoolers live streaming this, and it becomes a part of this fabric that is this, like, beautiful, like, tejido that is so vibrant and colorful of Southeast Los Angeles. And this literally becomes just engraved, like, embroidered into this narrative. And so I'm like, you know what? Like, if I don't contribute to this in a way that speaks power to this concept of somos más, of the collective, that we are a people of resilience, it's like, then what do I serve as an artist? It's like, what I'm not. I'm not. There's one thing to visually represent and to stand there and to just capture and just witness, and it's another thing to do so in a way that empowers, and do so in a way that literally strikes at the heart of all of these, that strikes at the heart of the empires and of their tools of oppression and violence. And
and I would say, like, this happened right in front of Mainline, right by Jack's car wash, which is no longer there. And then this screen print really, the folks at Mainline started printing it on T-shirts, jackets. I know I have my custom jackets. I have 2 crop tops.
That was their amazing, that was their very generous and very amazing offer to the community, is that they truly, they rocked with it so much, and they literally just, on a DM, which is majority of where I do business, like, people literally will just DM me and they'll be like, hey, like, give me a quote, or, and they literally were like, oh, can we print this out? And I'm like, y'all love this so much, like, absolutely. And then, you know, it was being offered, I believe, for free. Like, folks were able to go into this site where collective trauma occurred.
Yes.
And then pick up their shirt that was like, we're not gonna forget this.
Yes.
And it's not going to be a moment just solely of trauma and devastation and sadness. It's going to be a moment that is then continues on with empowerment, with solidarity. So that was Mainline's very generous offer to the community, and they printed out not just shirts but these prints as well. So shout out to your local community. Everything that you can find, it's in your community.
It's already there.
It's already there.
And for me, I loved seeing the print, because then, right, we had this whole day of like in person, also just in social media, seeing so much chaos and violent images. And then literally the next week was everyone like, here's my t-shirt, and like just so much dope content was being made with my homie's design. It was just really
it was overwhelming. And now, like, sometimes I'll see people on the street or at events and they'll wear the shirt. So the shirts that Mainline printed has the design on the back, and on the front it says resist. And sometimes I don't know, I don't like to give myself too much credit, but I'll see people on the street and they'll be wearing it, or I'll go to events and I'll literally just be like, oh, I like your shirt. And they're just like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, yeah, like, that's odd. Like, I'm not going to be like, you know, oh, like this, but I do get that, like, wow, like my own people, like, yes, I get a lot of backlash from my own community members sometimes, but that's not going to take away from the fact that the beautiful, regular, everyday people in my own community love my art so much that they want to wear it, that they want, oh my goodness, the educators in my community who I have like the biggest, the big, like I owe everything to them, to public school education and local teachers. They are like probably my number one supporters. And they'll request, and they're like, how can I pay for these? And I'm like, why would I make you pay? Like, you know, why? And so, you know, again, like, it's such an amazing feeling that is also, it humbles me, and it keeps me grounded, and like I need to do my due diligence when it comes to representing my own community, because the way we exist as we are is enough in itself. We don't need to change. It sucks that we have to struggle, but we grow together from that. And I think that, yeah, that's not ever going to be taken away. I'm never going to depict anything pro gentry, pro anything my community doesn't need, you know, because my community is as it is. My community shops at Northgate. They play checkers in the park. They build community there. They don't need, you know, art galleries. They don't need these designated spaces. They literally build community on the street corner of Florence and Atlantic, and they have fun at the park, and they build connections of solidarity in their mobile home parks. And I think that's, if it's not resilient, if it doesn't speak power to that concept of the collective power, then what are we, you know?
And this is why I have this print that I got Mainline on my altar, because, and I'm like, damn, it's been around for a year. It's pretty, I'm like, oh my God.
Nice paper.
It's nice paper, I took good care of it. But because it's been in my altar, and literally this is what I look at every morning. Like, it's literally, I have my mirror, my altar, and just my things. And like when I light my sage and, you know, bless myself every morning, this is the image that I look at.
It's to get ready.
Yes, to get ready for the day. Like, yes, we're people resilience. We will not be broken. This ice will get the hell out of SELA. Like, you know, just so, I love this image so much. And I can't believe I've had it for a year. I think definitely I love that you're seeing more of your stuff out there. For me personally, as a super fan, I would love to see more Noche Divina, posters and prints and things out there. I'm working on it. I'm working on it to see if we could get some of that stuff on our Enderland side.
You have been, when we met, I was literally, I was still youth. I'm no longer youth. But
we both aged.
Yes. Yes, we both have. Very gracefully.
Gracefully.
But I again, like, I would not have the drive without mentorship from people like you. I had the vision, and Nancy was like, you need to put it on the table right now. So without encouragement from mentors in our community or within our communities of solidarity, you know, we might not come from the same communities, but our communities are like that. Like we know the same struggles. So without, you know, again, everything exists in your own community. You can pull from it, you can give back to it. So
yes. Yeah. And I want to say also, just like, this is like a lessons learned. So like, we were able to meet, right, because I was working at a nonprofit, so I had access to resources, and my whole thing is always about making sure it goes to the people who need it the most right away, as soon as possible. So we had, like, you know, a youth internship where folks kind of met, did leadership development, and then we chose, like, different community leaders, and literally I was like, choose your project, and we'll make it happen. Yeah. And I know that was such an interesting experience, even for me as the person running the program, because I remember so many folks, like, you know, I have, of course, always invest in artists. So, like, half of the group were artists that we invested in. Or, put our money where their mouth is.
Real smart kids.
But a lot of folks were like, oh, like, but what do you want us to do? And I was like, no, what project do you want to lead? And then even in that cohort, folks were like, well, we kind of want to work on something together. Mm-hmm. And, like, so it was good that, like, even though folks, yes, were doing their own thing, but still kind of chose to do things collectively. So remember we did like a mural, like a traveling mural.
We did. And it was, oh my goodness, it was a hit. And that traveling mural went from literally, like, Riverside or a Riverside adjacent area to Bakersfield and then to Sacramento. And just to know, like, it literally started in Southeast LA because Nancy gave me and my peers at the time the reins and was like, if this is what you want to do, I'm behind you 100%. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, like, without that encouragement as, like, a growing artist, I probably would have been just doing basic, I don't know. I probably would have just been just nonprofit centric, which if that's what you do, that's what you do. You know, there's no, that's your hustle, that's your hustle. But I think I was very privileged to have my start in this field of artistry with someone who, in a nonprofit setting, with someone who was like, yeah, we're working within the confines of a nonprofit, and I'm still gonna stand behind you 100% in whatever it is that you choose to visualize and create.
Yeah, and it's crazy because during that time is also when we met Luna, who's also was my first guest on the podcast, and we talked about, you know, the park and also, of course, the Battle of Val. But it was really, you know, I think, you know, during that time, right, it was Trump 1.0, this was around 2017, and we were doing a lot of events that were trying to, you know, fight against, you know, the detention centers. We're fighting against Mesa Verde detention center on that time.
We're own back.
And then also just, you know, working on deportation cases, you know, folks trying to get folks free from detention. And so we would have events. We would have, like, you know, in SELA we had like a punk show, but we also had a punk show like in Bakersfield. But I remember one of the more artist events that we had is when we had the traveling mural. So each region got to, like, you know, do their own add-ons to the mural, and we would have like a music event, and then the mural was on the side. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy because I remember at Bakersfield specifically, there was like this band playing, but the majority of people were like on the side contributing to the mural.
And folks got down. Like, they were like really, I mean, the whole vibe was like, there were very talented artists and musicians. The whole vibe was definitely like a quinceañera vibe. It was great. It was amazing. And then you just had maybe like 15, 20 young people and elders who attended this event, literally just having their arts and crafts time. And I thought, like, it was amazing to witness. And we visualized this project as a collective, and it just took me and my peers being like, this is what we want to do, and you were just like, oh, great. Mm-hmm. I think that sounds fun. like we're gonna do it.
It's like, approved. Here's the art day. Let's go pick up the supplies.
And we did.
Let's program it. Make it happen. And I loved it because I think that day for me, I was like, oh, okay, every event from now on, we need to make sure we have arts activities. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone kind of saw, like, wow, like, yeah, there's a huge interest. People want their arts and crafts time.
They do.
Like, and it was like some folks spend like all their time there, and then like every region included such beautiful things. And like Anais mentioned, it made it all the way to Sacramento because at that time we were pushing some state policy to ban detention centers. Mm-hmm. So it also made it like to the capital, and it was like, again, a collective youth visual storytelling of like resistance, but also their neighborhoods. I remember the Central Valley folks were the ones that put in like all the fields and like the farm workers, and like the folks in the IE had like mountain ranges. So it was also really cool to see like the landscape of like where folks call home also made a huge visual. We have no idea where that traveling mural ended
it's
up.
floating around somewhere.
It's floating around somewhere. I think about it often, as you know, you can tell we remember.
We gotta do traveling mural 2.0.
Yeah, so we could do a new one.
Yeah.
We could do a new one.
Yeah.
But I feel like, just as a someone who does movement work, I just think for me, like at that time I was like, I'm gonna invest in the artists. We also have an awesome artist who was great at making zines. And like they became like our zine strategists.
There was a title for any creative role that any youth member took on. Yes, we had our zine strategists. We had our computer. We had our like our Canva warriors.
Canva warriors. I think we tried to do a podcast too, like back then.
Yeah, we did. We did.
We had a couple episodes. So, it was really like, it was a very creative time. And I think, I just remember one time too, it's also, like, come on, I think when you do youth organizing, youth want to do creative stuff, invest in it, I remember one time, our office at the time was also on Tweedy Boulevard in Southgate. So we've been doing work, just to say, I will take credit for that. Like, we have been doing mad work in SELA. This I Said a SELA work is not new, or like, the fight for the mobile homes that you and I are a big part of is not new. Like, we have been putting in work. But I remember our little office in SELA because it was such a youth space. Like,
it really was. Oh, I think about that from time to time. I remember, like, not only was it this hub of creativity, but the local gamers really activated.
Oh my God.
The local gamers, and they would bring, man, I must sound really old, but like their PlayStations, their Xboxes, and they would pack that office, and they had strict guidelines, and they said, you can't be in this space if you are, pro-ICE, if you're if you're right-wing, if you're all of these isms, they like check that at the door. And so,
like, no homophobic slurs.
Literally, the gamers held it down. They really did.
And it was cool because it was like, they wanted to create a gaming scene, but they were also like against ICE. So they were like, can we just be like gamers against ICE? And we're like, yeah. And how they would bring folks together was through like, they would, these Smash tournaments. But yeah, it would be like,
tournaments,
the biggest turnout for events was their events at our office.
Literally, yeah.
And that was also Pedro. Pedro was one of the
Shout out
to Pedro, because he really organized like the gamer community in SELA to care about immigrant rights.
He commandeered that space, and he was like the gerente, but he was so just a good-natured young person. Shout out to Pedro, wherever you are. I hope you're excelling and you're thriving, because you really contributed to this space in Southeast LA that had not yet been activated. And again, shout out to Pedro, to the gamers, and I still think, like, we had literally right when the pandemic hit, the artists were gonna collab with the gamers to do like a loteria game night.
Yes, I remember.
And then literally like the next day, and it was a lockdown order, and so we couldn't. And so I don't know, somewhere that maybe it took place in an alternate reality, but yeah, man, I feel like We've lived so many lives. We've lived so many lives.
So many SELA lives.
Yeah.
But I feel like, you know, I was so proud of that art office. And I do kind of pass by it sometimes. And now it's like a it's like a beauty school. But I'm like, damn, we should have held on to it. But, you know, hey.
We evolved.
We grew.
We grow. And we can make do. Anyway.
Yeah. We are resilient.
We can make do in a Denny's. We can make do, again, in a mobile home park meeting space. We can make do at Salt Lake Park, even though Salt Lake Park, our council members completely trashed it. And they lied, you know. We could go into so much about that. But we can literally make do in any space, any community. We don't... You know, like, as great as it is having a designated office, I think the last 5 years have shown us, like, community can be built anywhere. Like, you literally can just pull up anywhere with a mural and be like, all right, we're going to do this now. And community makes it happen.
And I think just anywhere where there's cafecito and chisme and good vibes, there, ahí está.
You pull up for the pan dulce. and people do.
Yeah. But shout out to the gamers and shout out to all the folks, the young folks that were involved in the SELA space at that time on Tweety Boulevard, because just such beautiful like art and just youth work happened. And I know at some point I remember I am a chill ass like program person when it comes to working with you. So I remember even at one point like I had to go somewhere and I was like, oh nice, the gamers are coming. You know, I always make sure to feed people. But I remember at one point, like, you had, like, the keys to the office, the company card, and, like, the keys to the van.
Yeah.
Because that's how much trust, you know, we put in our folks. And, like, even in terms of, like, the running of the space, like, that was Pedro and all the gamers because they were so neat. And I know we're talking a lot about the gamers, but they were such a great team to the space.
They kept that office so clean. They kept it clean. Smelling good. Smelling really
literally,
good.
Like, every time they would have an event there, the office would be 10 times cleaner than when they first got there. So they really set the bar also in kind of how we take care of space. And it was just such a good synergy, again, of, like, a lot of the folks who you see now continuing to lead the work really met in that space. And, like, our creativity and trust with each other was nurtured. Yeah. So I know sometimes, you know, when folks reach out to me, they're like, oh my God, you know Noche Divina? Because, you know, they don't know your name.
I know, they don't. And I'm like, depending on who you are, I'll tell you my real name. But sometimes, sometimes I've gotten, like, you know, people ask me for my name, and I'm like, I don't think
I want to tell you.
Are you, you know? You have good intentions or you have bad intentions?
Yes. But I feel like, you know, when people ask me, like, because, you know me, I am a super fan of, like, anything Orozco. You, your mom, your dad. I am a fan of the whole family. Dani, I am a fan of the whole...
The Orozco clan.
The Orozco clan. Yep. Like, we roll, you know? And I feel like every time I share your image, there's always, you know, folks will DM me, like, oh my God, do you know this artist? Like, are they your friend? Or, like, sometimes, you know, we'll take pictures and I'll tag you. Oh my God, that's Noche Divina. Okay, now I'll put it on my friends only list, not on, like, public. But, and for me, I'm just like, yes, like, this is my homie. I know them. More people should know you. And I, you know, and kind of just to, like, I think more people definitely need to know of your work. For folks who don't know where to find your work, where can they search? Where can they get their Noche Divina?
I'm so bad about this because my dad is, he makes websites. He's like a super, like he can code, he can design websites, and he's always like, you need to do your website. And I'm like, later, like I don't know why I'm too Gen Z.
I was going to say, it's because you're Gen Z.
It's because I'm Gen Z. Everything exists on Instagram. And I, again, have been so blessed and so privileged that the majority, literally basically all people who hit me up for contract work or if they want to design for something, they're literally just DMing me on Instagram. It's essentially my portfolio. It has a few hot takes sprinkled here and there, but I try to just curate this visual of community. So in a sense, like, yes, like this is Noche Divina's Instagram, but it's ultimately like a repository of community resilience, joy, sadness, the terror that we experience on a day-to-day. And I mean, if you want to see more, check me out on Instagram. So I only exist on Instagram. Site pending. Sorry, Dad.
I'll help your dad.
I know, it's just, yeah, it's my portfolio. I don't have any links out there. Or catch me floating in the wild around Southeast LA. Maybe you'll see someone wearing my shirt, or they have their poster up in their classroom, or
yeah. So at Noche Divina, okay? Because as a super fan, I want to make sure more folks see your art. But also, I think it's I was gonna say it's super Gen Z of you, but also it's because that's kind of where your audience is too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like you never have, like, your stuff is always shared widely.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel organically on its own. So I also feel también, like, I think that's also a reflection of you as an amazing artist, of, like, because your work is so connected to community
Mm-hmm.
feels so connected to it reciprocally. So it shares widely.
And I think also too, what's like holding me back at the end of the day from making a website is like just knowing like I can make do with so little. I know a website, you know, would definitely, it'll amplify anyone's reach, but I can make do with just one very humble Instagram account. So if you want to check it out at Noche Divina, or if you want to contract me for some design work, I do everything is, you know, no AIs, sudden AI intolerance zone. Everything, you know, if you need a flyer for your community event, I won't overcharge you. I'll be very, you know, I won't ever quote my community I won't do that. You know, I'll hook it up. I'll see what I can do. So, yeah.
But I would say yes, definitely if you're like a union or a teachers group or just any group working on campaign work, definitely hit up Anaís, because their visual work is so amazing and important to like pushing your campaign forward. I know I'm one of those people that constantly DMs.
I know, I love it. Anytime, and Nancy, you like not only have, you know, you've been my mentor and my close friend, but like even as a client too. Like, I'm like, Nancy is just such a, not only as like a special person in my life, but even as a client, you are like the easiest client